Thank you, Tiffany. So I'm going to present the findings from a first analysis of questions related to the environment in TPRs. Just to mention, this is not a comprehensive analysis, but it's really a first analysis to provide you with some illustrative examples of the type of questions that members have asked in TPRs. So we looked at the at the Q&A segments of 7 recent trade policy reviews during 2020 and 2023. So you see it's like 7 trade policy reviews, a limited number of members. And in these 7 reviews, we identified around 65 questions that have been asked on subsidies related to the environment. And in terms of types of questions, we can see that some questions relate to the environmental objective, to the environmental impacts, to the trade impacts, to impacts on third countries, also to design characteristics, eligibility criteria, and also questions such asking for further program details. And also at this point, let me ask my colleagues Davelin and Marisol, who actually did the hard work to go through these hundreds of pages, and I'm just presenting a few slides. Next slide, please. So here, just like to give a few examples, these are like anonymized questions that have been asked in these 7 TPRs, which relate to environmental objectives of subsidies. For instance, could you elaborate more on the topic of subsidies and other public incentives provided to support the renewable energy sector? What are your strategies, incentives offered to achieve the target of reducing transport-related greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2050? What actions are taken to promote the use of low-carbon hydrogen? Please provide a comprehensive list of trade measures with an aim to promote decarbonization and environmental protection. What trade-related measures have been taken to fulfill commitments under multilateral agreements? And which measures related to climate mitigating effects or reducing environmental impacts in sustainable agricultural practices have been implemented? And one comment I wanted to make on already here is, you can see, I mean, you have like questions, of course, which are specific to subsidies, but also you can already see from some of the questions that subsidies actually part of a broader set of trade-related climate measures that are asked in trade policy reviews. Next slide, please. Here you have a few examples of questions related to the environment, so the impact. No, sorry. The impact of subsidies on the environment. So here, questions asked of how is it ensured that support to agricultural production takes into account its environmental impact? What are environmental sustainability criteria that are applicants required to meet in order to be eligible for the subsidy program? What is the impact of introduction of certain incentives on the conservation of the forest? Is there any increase in private landowners adhering to voluntary guidelines and adopting best management practices? So here have a few examples that mainly relate to agriculture and impact on the environment. Next slide, please. And then another set of examples relating to impacts on trade and third countries. For instance, how can you ensure that subsidies do not harm the interests of other members or affect international trade? How will the trade policies contribute to decarbonization and the achievement of climate goals without becoming a form of protectionism? How do you intend to implement these incentives so that domestic content requirements do not create a distortion in the markets and foreign manufacturers and investors of similar products under similar conditions are not put to a disadvantage? And finally, in formulating environmental policies and measures, have you given any consideration to how to ensure that such measures, while aiming to achieve the environmental goals, would not create barriers hampering international trade and competition? So this is already the last slide. So these are like a few sample questions that we found in TPRs that relate to the environment. And this could be a basis in your work on an indicative list of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rainer, and to your colleagues as well for preparing